So the last thing I want to talk about is brute forcing. Well, if you look at this table, this is all the possible scenarios I could have with my three conditions of having the ball, of having more friends, more than zero friends, right? It's either zero or more, it doesn't really matter. And is it either blue or not? Obviously, if the conditions would be like blue, gray, let's say for weather, there's blue, there's gray, there's sunny, etc. We're not going to deal with that. Let's say in this scenario of only having either or, either I have the ball or not, either I have more than zero friends or not, either the sky is blue or not. In this case, I already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 possible scenarios that could happen, right? And we already defined a few of them. We've defined this one. This is line number 9. In the case of all three of them are true. We've defined where the first one is false, but the other two is true, line 5. So let's say number 5, which is line 12, right? We've defined line 15, where we say our friends wanting to play is 0, but everything else is true. So that's true, false, true, line 15. We've defined 18, which is everything's true except for the last one. True, true, false. True, true, false. And this one would be line 18. Now, we could go ahead and create else if for every one of these situations. But again, we're going back to it's doable and it's not so wrong. But we want to optimize our code for one, readability. And this readability is going to happen if we use a bit of logic, a bit of common sense, right? You could notice that a lot of these scenarios will require that the ball to be true, and a lot of other ones is to false. So from what we learned from the last two videos, we could probably divide our work into multiple scenarios to enable us to specify if what is it that I'm missing, right? Rather than creating else if 8 times, rather than creating these conditions else if 8 times for every possible scenarios, we could sub-categorize them. So we could make them part of the body of another condition. And why would we want to do this? Sometimes they might look the same or the same amount of lines. Well, we're not trying to save line numbers. What we're trying to do is make it clean code, so much more readable. It takes us a second to understand what the code is doing rather than a complete 5-10 minutes to understand which part of these else if is the one I want to go into, right? So what we could do is divide this. So we're going to play a bit of logic here. So let me just clean a little bit here. This I'm going to leave there. So the first part is I noticed that number 1 to 4 is I have the ball, it's true, but the condition of those two other ones is different, right? So in the case, you have the video. So I'm going to kind of rewrite this one more time for making this subdivisions. So one thing we could do. So in this case, no play is not going to be in there anymore because we're going to specify every time what it is that's missing. Like let's say line number 4 over here, this little or row number 4. It's when I have the ball, but I don't have enough friends, or the sky is not, and the sky is not blue. So two things that are making me not be able to play. So the no play already we don't need it because we're going to specify each one of these. Now, let's see how we could make this clean. So what we want to do is subdivide. So subdivide could basically mean something like this. Let's make this into new lines. So basically, it's going to be either I have a ball or else I don't have a ball, right? Now we categorize 1 to 4 at line 9. 5 to 8 at line 11, because those are the moments that we don't have a ball. Okay, let's go a bit more precise now. In this case, inside the true, so now what we're looking at, just to make sure that you're with me, 1 second. Inside this line 9, we've divided at line 9. This is all 9. And 11 to 13 is all of this. Right? Why does this matter to us is because now we could ignore the half ball. Now what we're talking about is more about this friends or this whether is blue. Right? And again, if we want to, we could subdivide if that's convenient for us, or we could do some other things. So let's see what we could do to make our code a bit cleaner. So we're inside the first section, the first half, 9 parts, right? So what can we do to make this code a bit more interesting? We notice the friends is again divided in 2. And the weather is also divided into 2 true, 2 false. Well, we know one certain thing is that if I have all 3, well, that's the only time I could play. Never again can I play. While in the other cases, we really only have one of each, and then both of them are false, right? So let's try this out a little bit, and then we're going to go optimize it again. So we're going to say friends is, again, I'm utilizing the IntelliSense, so I barely type anything. I press the letter F and I press enter, and you could see the variable name comes out really well. So if friends is bigger than 0, then we're talking about number 2, right? Number 1 and number 2. If friends is bigger than 0 and let's just put that inside, and the weather is blue, well, then at that moment, I want to play. Now, if we only have one statement inside of our body, we don't need to actually put the curly braces. So in this case, I'm going to leave the curly braces out because it signifies that this is in because we only have one statement inside. Because we have one statement inside, we don't need the curly to represent the body, right? It's still the body, just we don't need to specify. Normally, I would suggest not to do this, so you get a bit used to it. But let's say over here, play. Now, that's our line 1 over here. So let me clean this up as we're going. So this is taken out. Actually, before we do that, let me take off that red. There we go. Where was my eraser? I lost my eraser. Ah, I'm on it. Okay, there we go. Dip, dip. All right. So the first one that we're talking about, we got it. Line 10, 11. So let's say condition 10. This line. Cool. Easy stuff. Now, if you notice, by taking out this line, we're left with these 3. True, false, and false. Right? So in this case, what we really care about, because we already have that one, really care about is this true or false. And then we don't really care. So, again, we could come down and say if, let's say as an example, if friends want to play is bigger than 0, then we're going to do something. Again, I don't need those things, but let's leave it out first. If friends is bigger than, if it's true, then number 2, we have the only last condition. Well, it means the weather is false, right? Because we already taken care of the other true. So to be honest, if this is true, we could already just put out here, weather bad, as an example, right? So let's see what I'm talking about, this logic. It's a bit weird because our condition doesn't talk about the weather, but it talks about friends, and yet we're writing weather is bad. Well, look at here. This line is already taken care of, so there's no more of this. The next possibility comes down to these 3 things left. And we're saying if the friends is bigger than 0, so condition is true, well, then by consequence, it would basically mean whether is false, right? Now, however, even though we did this by logic, this is bad coding again, because this would confuse someone, would say, let's say if I come back to this 5 years later, would tell myself, why did I write that? I don't have this table beside me. I'll have to again think about this, think about the logic. So logic is good, but it could become a problem if we go a bit overkill. So this is still not a reasonable thing. So now you would say, well, okay, so if it's the weather, well, I'm going to say weather not equal blue. All right. Weather not equal blue is true. So we get our line number 2. And over here, line number 4 would work out too. But what would happen if, again, we're playing with logic, so it takes a bit of time. So this line number 12 is this one and this one. For this line 2, it's fine. This works out. The weather is bad. But for line number 4, well, weather is bad, but also I don't have friends. So that becomes a problem. Well, it doesn't become a problem because we could output both of those things. We could say there's no, just you got to remember one big thing is there's no rules that tells you how to make your code. So if I wanted to, I could say also friends I want to play is, well, let's say it's 0. And in that case, we're going to say no friends, right? Then you're going to tell me, well, what was the point of all this if you're going to separate the code into different parts again? Well, the purpose of this is to determine what the feedback is. So what do I mean by this? Let's go ahead and erase this for a second. We don't need this code anymore. In this case, we've covered every scenario in the top half. Do you believe me? Let's try this out. So let me take off these colors and let me erase these numbers. So let's say this 11 I'm going to leave, okay? So let's take a green color. So what do I mean by this? Let's look at this. At line 9, we get the first half. Then at line 10, we get the first line, and we already wrote it down. So we're not going to check that again. This line 10. They're all true. We get line 10. Play. And we'll test this out in a second. Now, however, we have the ball, and we get the weather is not blue. So weather is not blue. I write bad weather. Weather is not blue. I write bad weather. And then the next line 14, we say if the amount of friends is 0, we got no friends. So if we look over here, we got no friends. Over here, we got no friends. Right? Both conditions will run because they're separate condition. They're not a connected, I didn't want to erase all that. Let me just write that again. So they're not connected to each other because they're separate if statements. There's no else connected to it. There has to have an else connected for them to be a combination. So at this number 2, we have weather is not blue, so we have line 12. And over here, so we have line 12. At line 14, we're representing friends is 0. So this one and this one. So 14 and 14. Right? Let's see how it looks like in code, running the application. We got to make sure logic works. So we got to remember that half ball has to be true because we're only covering the top half right now. So this is going to be true. I don't have friends, but it's blue, right? So it should tell me I'm not playing because I have no friends, and only that, right? So true, false, true. No friends. That's great. What if I don't have a blue sky, I have a whatever this color is, let's say gray. I run it again. Now it should show me I have no friends and that the sky is not blue. Weather bad, no friends. Hey, it's working. What if I do have friends now? Should only show me weather bad. Right? It's working out fine. By a little bit of logic, we got all the different case scenarios for 4 of them going on. Okay. Why am I not putting have ball anymore? Well, that's because to enter this if statements, we already checked for ball. We could nest our if statements as many times as we want. We could have nested conditions as many times as you want, infinite times. I see sometimes people limit themselves. Nesting is not the greatest thing, but don't limit the code, especially at your level. If you need 1 million nested, go for it. Right? Until we get better at this, we want to play around. Don't put rules on yourself. Now let's talk about the bottom half. So in this case, ball is false, but you'll notice that the rest of the code is kind of the same thing. So what would happen if I take these two, and let's say I put it here? Not thinking it too much, but let's see, does it work out? Easiest thing to do is always go check our code manually or change our values and see what it shows us. But you need to make sure you do that test. Don't give out things that don't work. So let's say in the case our weather is bad. Line 17 over here. Which one is weather bad? This one and this one. So 17, 17. Oops, why am I writing the same thing? So this, our weather is bad. Okay. What if the scenario is, one second, I'm changing colors on my thing. What if the scenario is that we have no friends? Line 19. Okay, which one's friends 0? This one and this one. So line 19, line 9, oops, why am I writing in the same page? 19. Right? Are we missing something? Well, obviously, right away, we could see that we're missing this one. Let's first run it, and then we're going to come back to it. We could always run this many times. So right now, we got weather bad. So the first thing we need to do is say we have no ball. When we run it, and the weather is bad, we should get the weather is bad, and I got no ball. But when I come back to here, the only thing I see is the weather is bad. Where is my no ball? Right? So the first thing we could do to make sure this is fixed is we add no ball. Notice that this one is not a nested condition, is inside the else right away. Why? Well, because if we have a ball and if we don't have a ball. So right away, we should say we got no ball. And now we're going to check if the weather is bad or if I don't have any friends. Right? This one is already checked. It's checked by this thing. If I have it, do the body inside. If I don't have it, do the body inside of the else. Right? So now if we run it, well, first of all, I'm going to update my table. Here's my pen. It's getting dark here. The first thing is, well, now my line numbers don't work. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. So here, else is when, well, for all of them, really. So line 17 is for all of them. Why? Because for all of these, I don't have my ball. Then, let's maybe try and match the colors. 12, well, it's already all green or one color. Let's say red is going to be for bad weather. So bad weather is here. This is line 18. Bad weather, bad weather. And then for the last one, light blue or pink, actually. The last one is I have no friends. So no friends over here, which is line 20. No friends. no friends, and that's it, right? Now, if you noticed, in all three cases, there's going to be one unique of that one, where the other two are true. So you'll see it as a one line number. Ignore this one, which is the only one that's true, and that's our result. But for the false, there's going to be the uniques, where they're the only one that's false, like this one. This one is the bad weather. This one is the bad friend. Oh, sorry, we have no friends. And this one is no balls. These are the uniques. And in all the other cases, they're going to be combined with one of them, right? So if we try out our code now, actually, let me clean up that. There we go. If we try out our code now, you'll notice we're always going to get no ball and weather bad. Let's say if all of them were wrong, how about that? So friends to play is 0. We don't have a ball and the weather is bad. In this case, I should see all three things specified. No ball, weather bad, and no friends. Hey, we got something going. So feedback, what you should understand from this, feedback is important. And we could use a bit of logic to determine our code a bit better. We don't have to specify everything. By using nested, we could cut off the no ball. If I wanted to, I could have said for each one of these 8 cases, I could have specified I have a ball, I have a friend, I have the weather's good. I have a ball, I have friends, the weather's bad. I have a ball, I have no friends, the weather's bad. I could have went for each one of those, but it would have been really hard to read and understand. By subdividing it, by making it nested conditions, it allowed me to kind of divide this and make it a bit more readable. And the stuff that repeats, well, then I don't need to ask the questions I don't need to have, right? The weather does not depend on the friends. Something like that. The only one that's really dependent on all three to be true is this one. So if we wanted to, maybe we could even clean this up further, but that's going to be for another time. So maybe if you look a bit on your IDE, sometimes it will help you clean up your code. And this is really powerful. And this is why it's good to have a good environment, a good system. So over here, we got this part that says common part can be extracted from if. Is this good or bad? We don't know. But the greatest tool that we have, it's undo button. So try it out, extract common part from if, see what it says, and see if it makes your code cleaner, right? And if it does, well, then our code is going to be amazing, right? Notice here, it extracted those 2 parts, so that it makes our code even more simpler, right? And this is pretty cool. Is this correct, though? I'm not too sure. We got to test it out, right? Always test. In this case, I'll let you have the fun of testing out and making sure if it works or not. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.